Hello and welcome. I'm Stephanie Miller, HOK's Director of Public Relations. And for the next 25 or 30 minutes, we are going to discuss storytelling and branding in the workplace. This topic is particularly relevant in today's era of hybrid work, where the office has become an important tool for promoting and supporting collaboration and culture. And Graphic Packaging International's new Atlanta headquarters offers an excellent example of this. The company's new workplace creates an experience in which employees, clients, and guests can actively engage with the company's products, story, and brand as they pass through the space. So today I'm joined by three people who helped lead the experiential strategy behind Graphic Packaging's new headquarters. And in case you don't know, experiential strategy brings together interior designers, experiential designers, and clients to ensure that key messages for a space are translated through all stages of the design. So joining me are Dan Ahern. He's a Vice President of Global Design and Innovation at Graphic Packaging International. Vivien Chen, who is Senior Project Interior Designer in HOK's Atlanta studio, and Bethany Foss, who is an experiential designer based in our Kansas City studio. So we want this to be engaging and interactive. We're going to have a lot of conversation, but we also want to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments, please put them in the LinkedIn comment section, and hopefully we'll have time throughout the conversation to pull some of those. And then if we can't get to you, please leave the comments and we'll try and respond to them after the fact. But we have a lot that we want to cover, so let's jump right in. So before we get into the details of the new headquarters, Dan, could you provide a little bit of background about what Graphic Packaging International does and what you would hope to accomplish in this new workplace?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Graphic Packaging International, we're a global leader in sustainable consumer packaging. We design and produce consumer packaging made primarily from recycled or renewable materials, and we're an industry leader in innovation. Graphic Packaging operates on a global network of design and manufacturing facilities serving the world's most recognized brands in food, beverage, household products, food service, and other consumer product categories. What we hope to accomplish with the space in this new workplace was to create an immersive innovation experience for both our employees and our customers. So from the moment you walk through the front entrance, you're greeted with an open and inviting space. There's technology everywhere, but it's approachable and it's really not that overwhelming. So it kind of blends in with the space and it pulls you in to engage there. So in every space that we work through, we wanted to make sure that it facilitated collaboration. So furniture is modular, things move around. We can move furniture in and out of rooms, pull empty rooms, fill them up with things. And again, the new space really allows us to do anything we want. It makes anything possible, which really lines up with our overall brand statement, which is a world of difference made possible.
Yeah. Well, and you're already moving right into the next topic that we wanted to talk about, is how the design of that new workplace supports the company goals. And maybe to begin to dive into the collaboration part, how did you work to achieve these goals? What was your process with both the interior design team and Bethany with the experience design team?
I'm going to let Vivien or Beth let them take this one because it's It was a long process.
Maybe Bethany, do you want to start with
I would love to. Yeah.
Tools and processes? Where do you begin for something like this?
Yeah, I think, part of what made this project really successful was how integrated we were, from the very beginning in designing that whole experience, where we all kind of aligned on this concept of raw refined, and we understood that we wanted to give graphic packaging something that served their needs and spoke to who they were culturally. That needed to be a part of the solution, but it was more than just interior design elements or brand elements. It was really getting to the root of how this space would be used and what those key touch points would be, as they're bringing customers into their space or as their employees are living in that space daily. And we went through a lot of exercises specific to the experience center space that included, persona creation and journey mapping, where we would really indicate, where were those key moments in time where you would be able to talk to customers and have specific stories kind of queued up throughout their journey, throughout their experience. And from those early discussions and that journey mapping, we were able to extract a lot of really wonderful storytelling elements. And you can see here kind of an example of what that journey exploration looked like from that early discovery phase. And we did pair this kind of with some loose sketches and kind of imagining the possibilities of what things could be and what moments needed to take shape in the customer journey.
Maybe if I could just jump in, I'm sorry to cut you off. What is the Experience Center? Because that's not going to be a part of a workplace that maybe everyone who's watching the call will really understand. And it's such a heart of this project.
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. When we have customers come in to the office, we're typically trying to solve a problem that they've identified. And, and we're working in retail consumer packaging. So we have to be able to display packaging in its environment that would be in a grocery store or in a quick service food market or in a quick service restaurant, quite frankly. We had to make sure that we were able to do all of that. And so creating these spaces where we could display them. Now, again, we could have done it with basic, gondolas and you would see in a normal grocery store, but we picked a little bit more refined design for that to get the same effect. And so that's it. Everything that made sense to get the people in there. And then also being able to use the furniture in a modular way was really powerful for us and be able to flex spaces, open walls, close off walls, those types of things. And so that's part of it.
Great. And Bethany, I cut you off. I apologize.
No, it's good.
You were talking about journey mapping and sketches. And what other resources do you bring to this early stage if there was something else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and Dan kind of touched on this a little bit already, is, we need to dig into what those business values are and kind of establish a sense of purpose behind some of the design decisions that we're making and developing a strategy really early on. And part of this is really digging into that brand. What's the brand personality? What's the tone of voice? Are they curious? Are they more buttoned up? And for graphic packaging, we found that their history of innovation and their commitment to sustainability were key components of that story that were then expressed, throughout the building, not just in the Experience Center space, but up into the workplace levels as well.
And then you both work really closely with Vivien. So Vivien, as the interior design lead for this, where do you start?
At the really inception of the project, we kicked off the process with targeted programming exercises, and we talked through in depth about how the space could inspire employees, connect clients, and really showcase the products that Dan was talking about. And I think a big part of the project's success came from bringing our experience design team in early to shape the story with us and define a strong design concept, which Bethany mentioned in this case is raw and refined, which was inspired by how graphic packaging transforms raw materials into a very refined, sustainable packaging. And I think this really set the stage for the branding to come through from those larger to life moments to details like using recycled craft paper laminate throughout the project and bringing in beautiful corrugated cardboard-like fixtures, which I adore. So this is the entry experience. And to me, it's one of my favorite ways that helps the space tell GPI story and really set the tone for the whole project. I think Dan mentioned, graphic packaging wanted the space to feel very welcoming and a sense of excitement. That innovation happens here. So we made sure, in that reception shot, especially, that there's a sense of hospitality at the first point of contact. So we put in soft barriers like diagonal flat dividers. You can see, what's beyond the reception, people walking up and down the feature stair we put in. And also, integrating that barista bar So think about, the smell of coffee and pastries, which really makes the space feel inviting and draws you right in.
Yeah, I think the other thing too in that space is that it's open and you can see through to everywhere inside. And typically when you walk into, at least in my business experience, you walk into a reception area and you're kind of walled off and you're kind of isolated and you don't know where you're going to go. You can see action and a lot of energy behind, and there's no real walls. So you can see right into the space, and you can't hide anything when you're transparent like that.
Well, that feels like a good transition. So the space is visual, it's interactive, and as you just were indicating, very intentionally so, with the strong focus on storytelling and the brand. So let's dig in a little on storytelling. And how does this overall design, both the experiential and the interior design, how does that convey the brand and the story of graphic packaging? Dan, you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the staircase. If you can throw that image up there, the one with the staircase, and above that staircase, what we have is a sculptural piece, and it's a mobile, right? It's hanging down from these stainless steel cables, and each one of these shapes has a number on it, and that's our active patents. And so you can see how many of those there are. But the staircase. Thank you. But the staircase, what that does is it leads right out of our innovation, the room that we use to have conversations, the primary conversations. The stairway leads up to the second floor, where all the creative structural designers and our machinery designers and a lot of other people, quite frankly, are on the second floor. They can walk down this staircase, and that up and down and that action that creates a lot of energy. It also brings in a ton of light into the space that you normally don't get when it's floor by floor by floor. And creating this void into the right behind the reception area is just a beautiful thing. And it really talks about who we are, this aspiration to looking up, to looking beyond where we are now to where we could be. And using sustainable materials in a lot of these cases, that really tells our story in a really subtle way, but also in a really powerful way. Because it's designed for the 50th time you're there, not the first time.
Absolutely. And I think one of my favorite things about that beautiful, sculptural stair that we actually put in, especially for this project, is, the spaces around it, like Dan was saying, how they really morph and really change for the different functions that GPI has, and Dan, I'd love to hear how the space has been used.
Yeah, we've used it in a number of ways. I mean, when we have breakout sessions in the room, we can pull them into those other spaces that are just adjacent to the main space. Those are great. On the staircase, there's also some seating areas there. And so it's like a little stadium seating. So you can have a small little meeting. We've used them for year-end announcements from our CEO to the rest of the team. We've used them for other social events that have come through the building. It gives us more room to kind of gather around this kind of a town square type of feel, right? Where everybody has a line of sight. Everybody could be seen. Everyone can be heard. And again, that lines up to our brand strategy. That's who we are as a company.
Well, and we do already have our first question, and it seems to be really picking up on the threads that you're already talking about. So while trying to make an experience for both employees and customers, how do you make sure both parties are content with the results without focusing more on one side than the other? So how do you find that balance? Anybody want to jump in?
I think I can take this one. And I think part of it is establishing a little bit of a hierarchy of storytelling elements, right? You have very different audiences you're talking to if you're speaking to a customer versus an employee. And, we want to communicate the brand accurately and tell really meaningful stories. And one story might be appropriate for a customer, while another might be a little bit tired for an employee. So what we've found is kind of, developing a hierarchy or setting a priority for some of those stories to go in different spaces within a building. That's a strategy that we've used successfully, and it was implemented, into this project as well. And I was actually going to call out one of my favorite storytelling elements for the graphic packaging space was how we talked about the value and commitment to their environmental impact and kind of creating a better future for the planet. And this worked its way up and into the workplace levels to inspire employees. And it came from the story of graphic packaging and their practices of implementing recycling into their everyday work, right? And we kind of used this idea of circular design philosophy where we're specifying materials that are recycled or can be recycled later in their lifetime. And so on these workplace levels, we developed what we called story walls outside of every elevator landing that kind of helped as a wayfinder, but it also pulled in that recycled materiality that pointed back to things that graphic packaging was working on. So paper derived from wood and cardboard, even the metal that's used to create the machinery to manufacture the consumer packaging. So we reinterpreted these in kind of a series of large scale installations that spoke to this value and commitment to the environment and sustainability. And that kind of materiality and that ethos of using recycled materials worked its way into those big moments for employees, but also the smaller moments like room signage. All of the room signs were made from a recycled paper product. So those are kind of some of the ways that we cued in the storytelling, for employees versus what's directed more towards customers in that experience center space.
Yeah, I can add to that if you'd like.
Sure.
It's when we're meeting with customers, from that are involved in their innovation efforts for their businesses, we have parties from both our customers and ourselves in the room. And it's an interesting point now where we see when we're in the room, if you were to walk in, you would not be able to tell who worked for graphic packaging and who worked for our customer. Everyone's comfortable in this space because it's welcoming. And I think that's really powerful because that builds really good collaboration with both an internal collaboration, but also a collaboration with our customers.
Vivien, anything else you wanted to talk about? We have these individual moments, but then it's your responsibility to step back and look at it holistically. How do you tackle that challenge?
Yeah, and I think another part of curating that user experience, like Bethany says, the journey mapping was so important. Because we did look at the project holistically and really targeted different touch points and made sure they were spread out in a very natural way, as people explore the space and they walk around and they find new things every time they come in, was to vary the visual, interactive, and tactile touch points. So, every moment is a little different, and it makes the space really interesting.
And if we can move a little bit away from graphic packaging, because it's such an amazing and rich project, but you have such a powerful story to tell and a history that almost, I feel like maybe you were spoiled for choice. Maybe that is a fair way of saying it. But
I love that phrase. Thank you.
So wonderful. But I wonder, for some of our folks who are watching or listening who have other companies whose products and services maybe aren't as tactile or as visual, how do you work with them to design for experience and brand? And Bethany, Vivien, this maybe feels a little more your wheelhouse, but Dan, also we'd love to hear from you as well.
I think that, even companies that have, less of a product or work in those more intangible spaces, they'll always have a mission that we can connect back to, right? There's a brand that we need to interpret correctly, or else, it won't really resonate with the people that are using that space every day. And, sometimes communicating this mission can be really overt communication, like very literally spelling it out. But a lot of times it's very emotional communication, and something that, when people walk into the space, they just need to intuitively understand. So we try to really dig into, what makes the brand unique, what makes their mission unique. Is it their long legacy? Is it how they treat their customers? Is it global footprint? Get kind of to the root of what that mission is. And for graphic packaging, of course, it was this wonderful history and legacy of innovation and the years and years that you've spent creating and patenting products that serve people and the earth really well. And then, we're kind of gathering this information, and we use that to develop that experiential strategy really early on through those discovery sessions. And this kind of lays the groundwork for developing the overall experience. And I don't believe that it's really going to result in just one solution, but many aligned solutions from a lot of different disciplines, and the business itself, right? So it's not about just the chair selection or the furniture selection. It's about the chair sitting in a well-lit room with a calming pink color on the wall, with a beautiful mural behind you, with a fresh cup of coffee in your hand. Like, that's what we're designing for, the overall experience, and that's really what we're after.
Yeah, and for me, it's really about broadening the definition of a brand beyond just a logo. I think of it as it's not really only what you see, but it's also what you hear, what you smell, and how you feel. Is the space, like Bethany said, very well lit and bright, or is it moody and sort of edgy? So it really, even without the branding, the space should really evoke the feeling of who the company is and what they represent. I think it's also about the details, right? And materiality and the material selection. So let's say, for the graphic packaging project, we didn't have any of the branding, which I would never take away. But we, used recycled craft paper laminate throughout the project. We really honed in on materiality selection and made sure we selected materials with recycled content, and really it reinforcing graphic packaging's commitment to sustainability. So thinking about telling that story in a more subtle and in a more different way.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's a subtle thing too for our space. Sorry, real quickly, and on the other floors above our experience center, just a subtle difference in change of material on the flooring that creates a hallway. It's a traffic pattern just by the use of the materials on the floor, the color materials and how they're laid together. It was absolutely brilliant, and I think that it kept the space as open as we wanted it to be.
Well, and we've got another question that is picking up on this thread about materials. And so they're asking, what's the creative process and perhaps the criteria in choosing innovative materials to develop a design? So we know carpet tile is already going to be fairly standard, let's say. But if you are looking at these things like materials that would normally have been used for packaging or other applications, not an interior one, what was that process like for the criteria to evaluate them?
Yeah, Bethany, I think I'm going to let you take this one because we use some pretty innovative and creative materials, even down to the room signage.
Mm-hmm. I would say, for this project, we part of the criteria was going back to their brand and their values and what really aligned with their personality. And that was what we used to kind of, pull in ideas. We want to use something that's been recycled. We want to use something that will have a lifetime after this. So we really went back to, are we interpreting the brand and the personality and what graphic packaging wants to express in their space, and use that as our criteria for some of the material selections.
Great. We've talked about a bunch: brand, storytelling, innovative material. Anything we haven't touched on already? No?
I would love to hear some feedback on, how you're using the space today, Dan, and what feedback you've had from customers and employees.
Well, I think, the way we're using the space is the way it's been intended, which is great. I mean, that the technology that's in place allows us to incorporate both people who are in the room, but also some remote people. It's also important to have that technology in place so you can do that. But the idea behind the space is to make sure that if you're in Atlanta, you need to you come into the office, because you're going to miss a lot of chances for collaboration. You're going to miss a lot of chances to collide with somebody in the restaurant that we have on the first floor, right? So, and that is busy. I mean, if you don't get the lunch early, sometimes they're out of the dish of the day. So that's just shows the power of bringing people to the office. And we have a great chef, so he does a great job. And every time I'm there, I work remotely, so when I'm in Atlanta, I can't wait to have lunch because he is an amazing chef. But it is working exactly how we intended it. The spaces are flexible. We open the wall, we close the wall. We have little tiny breakout sessions. We all of the spaces are used, right? But yeah, I think it's just been absolutely amazing. It's such a better way to work, because because I don't like the same thing twice anyway. So just moving it around helps me a lot when I'm facilitating an innovation session with our customers.
Great. Well, I think there've been so many takeaways, but I've been scribbling notes, and it feels like the integrated team was really the key for success, both on the client side and bringing everyone together, brand personality and tone of voice, and really honing in on that very close, very tight, and maintaining that as a touch point throughout the entire process to kind of maybe be a true north for you all. Thank you all. This has been great. As we said, if you think of other questions, drop them in the chat. If you don't follow Dan and Vivien and Bethany already on LinkedIn, we invite you to do that. And if you have follow-up questions, you can reach out to them individually. And we thank you all, and we hope you'll see you soon.